Hi there, thank you for joining us here today at Duo Security. My name is Jim Simpson and I'm on the product management team. Today we're going to talk about our new single sign-on user portal along with an overview of Duo's offerings as a whole. Some quick housekeeping notes. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to ask us. We have a couple people standing by to answer any questions as part of this. And then we also have a couple of survey questions that we're going to ask along the way, and we'll give you those answers right back as soon as we've got them. So we're going to jump right in. The agenda, we'll go over what Duo's been up to for the last couple of quarters and what we're looking to do coming soon. We'll talk about trusted access and single sign-on. And for those of you who joined us previously, you know that we had a tiger naming contest, and so we'll reveal the name of the tiger here at Duo Security. So let's talk about roadmap. For our Platform Edition offering, we updated the device insight dashboard. If you were using this previously, there's a lot more data in there now. It's far richer than it was before. We've made improvements to mobile insight, so there's a lot more telemetry coming into the system that you can take action on. If you're making use of Dual Access Gateway, we supported another set of cloud applications, and we continue to add those quarter after quarter, so I'm probably not going to talk about them as much here anymore, but just know that we continue to add them. And if there are any particular that we haven't that your organization is interested in using, please let us know either via your sales rep, giving us a call and support, or if one of us from the product team happens to come to a meeting at your organization, just let us know there. We also shipped a feature that we call access control. So this is a way that you can actually enforce your users following a certain policy when they're going to authenticate against something. A good example of that might be, say, the Pegasus vulnerability that came out a few months ago on iOS devices. Apple pushed out an update to those devices at the same time to prevent users from getting compromised by it. And that vulnerability was pretty bad. It was a really simple, straightforward thing. If a user were to get a link via text message, web browser, email, and click on it, it would install an agent which would start to exfiltrate data. And when it was announced, Apple pushed out these updates, of course, and with Platform Edition, you could actually set a policy that required your users to be running the latest version of iOS before they were to authenticate. And I'll actually give a demo of that a little later on. The single sign-on user portal for Duo Access Gateway came out in October, and we'll take a look at that today. And also, for those of you who make extensive use of our APIs, we added a lot of the endpoint data that's available in the user interface to the APIs themselves. We have a policy here of trying to keep our APIs in sync with the rest of the product. We've been shipping a lot of things recently, so they are a little bit out of sync, but we do our very best to keep them up to date. This quarter, we're going to be shipping an improved Duo Access Gateway deployment. If you've set it up before, it's probably the most common feedback we get about it. It's a great utility, but unfortunately it takes a little time to get it set up because there's really good documentation, but you have to install a number of different things to get up and running with it. Of course, once it's up, it's pretty easy to use. What we're going to be doing is Dockerizing it, so you'll be able to use a tool called Docker. There'll be containers that essentially have everything within it, and when we have updates for it, all you'll have to do is just install a new container. No need to maintain or update any of the individual components anymore. And previously, we only shipped it on Windows. We'll now be shipping it on both Mac and Windows with the new deployment model. And then finally, mobile remediation. If your end users are running an out-of-date mobile device, Duo Mobile will now inform them, just like with self-remediation in the main product, that they should go ahead and update their operating system. In fact, when I came to work today, I was told by Duo Mobile that I probably should update to the latest version of iOS, which is 10.2, because there are a couple of vulnerabilities out there. And of course, in Q1, we're going to have a lot more exciting stuff to announce. We'll be back here in March with our next webinar going over some of those new exciting features. And of course, if you come to see us at RSA in February, you'll get to see them in person. And then across the board, we have a bunch of new functionality. We shipped a feature that allows you to do improved stage rollout. What this means is if you are a new organization to Duo and you want to put Duo across all of the services you want to protect, but you don't necessarily want all of your users to start using it, there's a way by a group access policy that you can set this up. And if you're an existing customer who wants to cover new services but not necessarily have users go through two-factor initially to make sure that they work well, you can use that same policy to do that. All of our end-user interactions from the authentication prompt, enrollment, and the mobile applications have been updated so that they are accessible. We're currently working on WCAG 2.0 compliance, and I think we're going for AA. We believe that all users should have access to security, and so we ensure that through making sure all of our end-user interactions can be used with any kind of accessibility devices that are out there. We also released a new Windows mobile application. If you used that previously, it was not kept up to with parity with our iOS and Android applications, but now you can have multiple accounts in it, and it works on Windows Phone 8 and 10. This past quarter, we released a feature that allows you to do Active Directory attribute mapping. So if you are using Active Directory right now, we heard from a number of customers, it's really great to be able to import all of this information. However, I don't necessarily use the same attributes that you have in the system, so it would be really great if there were a way to map the attributes that we use in our organization to what you have in Duo's data model. And so you can do that now to pull even more information from Active Directory into Duo so your users can get onboarded even more quickly. We've also made sure that our integrations support the full Windows Server 2016 stack. And if you're making use of Oracle Access Manager, we now have an integration for that. This quarter, we're going to be launching Azure Active Directory Sync. So if you're starting to move towards Azure Active Directory, you'll be able to onboard your users from that. Next year, we're looking at making a migration path. So if you're an organization that's considering moving from Active Directory to Azure AD, we'll have something in place that actually makes it easy for your team to do that. We're about to release a Splunk module. If you have Splunk as a SIM, you'll be able to take this, drop it in, and start getting information from Duo and visualize it. This is our first version of it, so if you have any feedback on it, we would love to hear from you. And then probably one of the things I'm most excited about, just because it hasn't changed in a really long time, we're going to be updating our Windows logon user interface. So if you're protecting RDP with Duo, you're probably quite familiar with the prompt where you have to type in either a passcode or push or phone. We've gotten a lot of feedback that it would be really nice if this just worked like our regular authentication prompt, and so we're going to be releasing that soon. Your users will have the same rich experience they do with our other authentication prompt. In the next quarter, we're going to be releasing more functionality around reporting and analysis so that you can see what Duo is doing for you right in the product itself. We'll also be updating the auth proxy with some usability and security improvements. And then if you're in an organization that currently uses some form of smart cards or other form of authentication, we're going to allow you to do chained credentials so that you can have a smart card be one of your form of authentication, and then Duo can be your second factor. So that's the roadmap for now. I'm looking forward to coming back here and talking about it in March when we'll have some more updates. Last time we met, both in April and in October, we asked you a question that we're going to ask you again this time because we think it's a good one. What types of devices are allowed to access work applications in your organization? And you can go to duo.sc/devices to take that poll. And what I'm going to do now while you do that is actually go over the results we got in both April and October to see what it looks like out there and what's changed. So this is from April of this year. 40% of the respondents then said personal devices without restrictions. So anybody can use their device to access the services in the organization. 8% of you said personal devices if they're up to date. And we would love to see that number grow. This is something that Platform Edition can help you with. Personal devices if they're managed, that's 16%. It can be really difficult to get end users to want to install mobile device management on their devices, which is why I think that number is pretty low. And finally, 36% of you said only corporate-owned devices can be used to access work applications. So that's what it looked like in April of this year. Fast forward to October, 6 months later, personal devices without restrictions didn't actually change, at least not with that survey. But what we did see is a change in how the mix of corporate-owned versus personal-owned devices that were managed changed. So Corporate-owned devices is now 26%. It went down by 10%. What we saw is an increase in personal devices if they're managed, so MDM rollouts, or personal devices if they're up to date, and that moved up from 8% to 11%. And so what this means is this is a good sign, you know, given that users are bringing their personal device in the organization. You definitely want to keep them managed and make sure that they're up to date, so they're not exploited, because that's that's one of the biggest causes of breach in an org. So. We'll talk a little bit about trusted access, and then I'm going to get into some demos here. So, you know, managing all of these devices that are coming into the network, the users which interact with them, and the applications that they're trying to access can be pretty complicated. There are a number of different software applications out there that are meant to help you with this, or products out there that are meant to help you with this. And the thing is you know, you've got products which focus on users, products which focus on devices, some products that actually do network analysis in real time, and then finally products that gate access to applications both on premises and in the cloud. The issue with all of this is that all of these products tend to be separate. So if you want to protect your users, you need some form of strong authentication, and so you're going to be buying a two-factor product. If you want to look after devices, you're probably concerned about like the security hygiene of those, and so you're looking at endpoint management or mobile device management, and so on and so forth. And then when it comes to applications, you're looking at things like CASB. So unfortunately, you know, our perspective on this is that, you know, this kind of complexity works against good security. And our perspective is that you know, instead of having all of these different kinds of tools out there, it would be a lot better if we could take down some of the silos, and we call that Duo's trusted access. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is, you know, what does that mean? From our perspective, it's essentially about ensuring that the users are who they claim to be, and their devices pass a certain level of security hygiene before they access the applications that they need to do work. And so we're going to start off with trusted users, which is all about letting the right people in. I'm going to tab over to that real quick here. So if you're using Duo, you're probably really familiar with this. I'm just going to jump in here and do a quick demo of what we think is the world's fastest two-factor authentication. So say I'm logging into my Cisco VPN service here. What's going to happen is, you know, I just log in with my regular username and password, and I get the Duo authentication prompt. And you'll notice down here there's this orange bar. I'm going to come back to that. I just want to do a quick demo here. And so I'm going to click, you know, send me a push. And then moments later, if our network is working well, tap, and boom, I'm in. Now again, I'm getting a notice here about Duo being out of date, or I'm sorry, my browser here being out of date, but I'm going to come back to that in a second. And so boom, I'm in here. Now, the other thing about this is, so that's just the authentication part of it. If I go back into this again, and I log in, the other thing that you can do for your end users, which can help with your help desk, is you can actually set it so that your end users can manage their own devices. And so I'm going to click on this My Settings and Devices here. And what this does, first, of course, I have to authenticate. So I'm going to do that. And I'm in. And this is what your users can use to manage the devices. Now you see I've only got one device here, but if I wanted to maybe add a voice callback number, I could go ahead and do that, and I would walk through the process here. I'm going to skip that for now just for the sake of brevity. I'm going to go back to the login. So the other thing I wanted to talk about here is as your users are authenticating to Duo service, we're getting telemetry about the devices that they're using to interact with the system here. And you'll see at the bottom I have this notice about my computer software being out of date. It doesn't say exactly what it is, but if I click on this Let's Update It, it actually tells me what that is. And it tells me how many days I have left to update it, and then also how I can go about updating it. In this case, I'm just going to skip it. And what I'm going to do instead is hop over to the dashboard in the administrative panel to show you what kind of information starts coming through. So when you log in, you can see here this authentication log, which is not necessarily tied to the service I was logging into there. there's a history of users authenticating to the service and information about the access device that they're using, whether or not they were able to authenticate, what the reason was behind why their access might have been denied, and then finally the application itself. And so all of this information is used to inform policies in the system, and it's also very easy to export into other services in case you have a SIM or something like that that you use to gather up all of this information. So I'm going to hop over here really quick, and we're going to take a look at the results of the first survey. We've got those. One second here. Okay. So it looks like personal devices without a policy are still at 39%, so about 40. And it's a little hard to read that, unfortunately, so thank you. Personal devices that are managed state is around 27%. Only corporate-owned devices, 22%, and personal devices, if they're kept up to date, moved up another percent. So good trends there, but we're going to move on to the next question we have, which is around how you're securing access to your cloud applications. So you can go ahead to duo.sc/cloud to do that. We're going to talk about trusted devices now. So let me jump over to that admin panel screen again. So as I was authenticating to Duo, it gave me that notice about my device being out of date, and it was going to walk me through a self-remediation workflow there. All of that information is brought together on this page here called our Device Insight page. And what it does is it'll show you how many devices that are out of date in the system, how many are up to date. It gives you a breakdown of the types of devices that are interacting with the applications on your network, whether or not they're laptops and desktops or if they're mobile devices. And then there's even more information at a deeper level, which devices have out-of-date operating systems or browsers or out-of-date plugins. And one of the interesting things about this is, we can change the time scale here, and you can see over time what happens is ideally out-of-date browsers or out-of-date plugins or out-of-date devices, it should trend down if the system is working well. But you'll see a bump up here. And typically this is when a vendor releases a new update. And so you're able to use Duo to create policy to help your end users keep those devices up to date. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to scroll up to operating systems and show you. So right now it says we have 82 Mac OS X devices that are out of date. So I'm going to go over here. And this will actually give me a list of the devices which are out of date. What, if any, security warnings they have. In this case, this particular user has an out-of-date Mac OS X device, but their web browser is also out of date. Now you could take all of this information and you could export it as a CSV file, or you could do follow-up with those users in particular. But that might be additional work that you're strapped for time on. And so the really great thing about Platform Edition is we can go ahead and edit our policy to make some changes to actually encourage the users themselves to keep those devices up to date. So I just clicked on a link there to bring me to Global Policy. And you'll see that because I was interacting with operating systems, it takes me right to the policy around operating systems. Now, in this case, we have a pretty strong policy here that says, block users if their version is below 10.12. But maybe I want my end users to, always be running the latest version. If I were to change to that, you'll see here that you can actually, number one, make sure that they're staying on the latest version, and number two, you can give them some kind of time frame in which they can get it up to date. So it doesn't immediately block them from gaining access to their applications. Now, on the other hand, say, a vulnerability like the Pegasus vulnerability came out. Well, you know what? I definitely want my end users to be running the latest version of iOS, but I'm also going to say, they need to do this immediately. I don't want them to run a device that might potentially be vulnerable and allow them to be breached. And of course, there are other options here too in policy. You can go ahead and only give them a warning about things being out of date, or if you wanted to, you could just choose to allow all versions, or you could choose to block all versions. And then this is a really easy way in which you can encourage your end users across a variety of things, everything from operating systems to browsers to the plugins that are being used in those browsers. It's a way to keep them up to date without actually having to add more work to your plate. Let's see here. So that's a high-level overview of Device Insight. You can also go and see more information about individual types of devices. And so we have breakouts for mobile devices where you can see the breakdown of mobile devices which are being used to interact with the system. You can see the different versions of operating systems that they're running. We also let you know whether or not those devices have been tampered with. In many cases, our IT administrators who use the product are aware that they've rooted or jailbroken their own devices, but this is really for end users who may not be aware that their device has been tampered with. And so this will actually give you insight into whether or not you have tampered devices on your network that you don't know about. You can also encourage your end users to have a screen lock, and you can gain insight into who does and who doesn't. Whether or not they're using a fingerprint sensor for biometrics. And then finally, for Android devices, you can also set policy and see whether or not they've got disk encryption set up on them. Let's see here. So with that, we're going to go see what the answer was to the last question. How are you securing access to cloud applications? And let's see here, 32% of you say that you're using cloud for single sign-on, which is excellent. 29% of you are using ADFS, that's also great. 21% of you are not doing anything at all, so I'm glad you joined us today. Perhaps we can help you with that. And 18% of you said you're currently using some form of on-premise single sign-on. So, the next question we have for you is, how many cloud applications does your organization use? And the URL for that is duo.sc/apps. And with that, we're going to take a look at Duo's single sign-on user portal. So let me jump over here to the Duo Access Gateway. So if you use Duo Access Gateway, this is an easy way for you to bridge two-factor protection into your cloud applications. And in speaking with customers about this over the last 6 months, one of the things that they have continuously said, hey, this is really great, this is very helpful, but what we really want is a user portal to help our end users gain access to just the applications they need. And so we just recently launched the Duo Access Gateway single sign-on user portal. And I'll give you a quick demo here. I'm going to log in. I'm going to use my regular credentials. Then of course you see here it asks me to choose an authentication method, and I'm going to choose to send myself a push. Now, for the single sign-on user portal, you'll see this little checkbox down here. It says, remember me for 1 day. This is how the single sign-on functionality works, and you can set a policy as short as an hour or as long as months, as far as how often you want your users have to do like two-factor authentication for the single sign-on functionality. We have this set to 1 day here because it's your average working day. I'm going to go ahead and say send me a push, and we'll get a push notification here. I'm going to go ahead and approve that. And again, because my Chrome is out of date, which I'm going to update right after this webinar, I promise, I'm going to click skip. And boom, I'm in the Duo Access Gateway. Now, what's really cool is this is pretty easy to set up. Once you have the Duo Access Gateway set up, I'm going to go over here and show you how the setup actually works. So say I want to protect an application, and I'm going to choose Salesforce. So protect this application. And I would enter in, all the information that I would need to set it up. And to get this to appear in the user portal, down here there's this permitted groups. And I'm going to go ahead and check this. I'm going to say, only allow authentication from users in certain groups. Of course, if you didn't set this up, it would appear for all of your users. But say I want to just limit Salesforce to the sales team. So I'm going to go ahead and start typing sales in here. And I've got, SE Salesforce, and I've got sales reps. I've got sales ops. And then anytime any of those users actually logged into the user portal, Salesforce would appear for them. So this is a way that you can go application by application and set it so that only the users who should see those applications have it in their user portal. Now, the other cool thing about the user portal is around the security hygiene of the devices being used to interact with it. So first of all, we see the security information about those devices as users are authenticating to it, even during the single sign-on experience. The second thing is that you can set different policies depending on what the criticality of that particular application is. So say, maybe Google Drive is is not as critical to the organization as, say, logging into Amazon Web Services. And so if I were to initially log in and click on Google Drive and let me in there really easily, I might have a policy that says, you know what, instead of just doing a simple push authentication, Jim also has to do a biometric as he logs in. And so I could set that policy, and if I went to click on that and I had that policy in place, instead of just letting me right into Amazon Web Services, I would actually have to meet that criteria as well before I was able to get into it. And so it's a really easy way to set the right level of security for the applications you need to provide the most seamless experience for your end users and help them keep their devices up to date. So, I think that's it for that particular demo. Last survey question was, how many cloud applications does your organization use? And we have, let's see here, wow, almost half of you say over 11 of them. So that's a lot more than in the past when we've done some of these things. 40% of you said 1 to 5. And 17% of you said 6 to 10. That's really interesting how that's sort of donut in the middle of 6 to 10 web apps. You either use a few of them or you use a lot of them, but not anything really in between. So that's what we call trusted access, trusted users, making sure that users are who they say they are, making sure that their devices are up to date, so that when they go to access the applications, that their security hygiene is where it needs to be before they get access to them. Of course, if you haven't tried this out, you can try Platform Edition for free. You can just go to the billing page and opt into it. It's 30 days. If you have any questions about it, you can get a hold of us. We're happy to answer any of those. Also, if you'd like to know more about Duo, we're blogging. We keep up to date with industry news, our perspective on what's going on in the world of security. There's product updates there. Our engineering team shares their best practices. And there's also information about our press and events. And if you're interested in joining us, we're also hiring. Go to duo.com/jobs. We have offices in Ann Arbor, San Mateo, London, and it's not just coming soon. We have an office in Austin with a lot of great people in it as well. So last but not least, the Tiger. For those of you who've hung out for this, thank you so much. We sent a survey out to solicit names for the white tiger that I have here. And we got a number of different names, and then we took all of those names and we gave them to everyone here in the organization. We had them vote on the ones that they liked best. And so I have the top 3 names here. The first one was Sam L. Jackson, because everyone loves a good pun. The number 2 one was Samuel, or Samuel. And last but not least, the number 1 is Samuel L. Jackson. So please meet our new tiger here, Samuel L. Jackson. And for the winners out there, we'll have something in the mail to you. And we appreciate everyone who joined in the process. And that's all we've got today. Happy holidays from Duo. Hope you have a great one.